Nowadays, it is not very uncommon for people to accrue multiple relationships prior to finding the one that they end up marrying and settling down with. So I essentially wanted to go through today how to process these past relationships on each of the physical, emotional, and spiritual levels that we each have. So, starting with the physical. So, for me, I started dating when I was in 7th grade, and from there, I developed a very bad reputation all through high school and the first years in college up until I converted Catholic at 21. And essentially, when I went to my first confession, so I was agnostic, kind of Christian going through college, and I apologized to God for, sleeping with so many people and doing all of these things. But this guilt, it stayed with me, and I kept regretting doing all of those things. And when I converted Catholic, I ended up going to confession, and my first confession didn't really work out, so I ended up having a second first confession where it literally lasted an hour, and we went through every single item that I had ever done, any drugs I had done, every guy I'd ever slept with, and approximately how many times that had happened. And so walking out of that confessional, all of the guilt was gone. So if you've been in a relationship with somebody where a physical element has taken place that was outside of marriage and outside of anything that that would have been against the chastity that we're called to, I would strongly say go to confession. That is the number one place where I have experienced that freeing from the attachment for what happened sexually. So because the physical is so entwined with the emotional, so with the emotional aspect, what to do. So after I converted and everything, I had committed to not kissing anyone unless they were my boyfriend and all of these things. I met a guy and essentially dated him. We didn't date, we were never together, but I was in love with him. I thought he was my soulmate. And while I was seeing him was when I got diagnosed with my brain tumor. This was in November of 2014. And then so I had my surgery in December of 2014, and my older brother died 2 days after the surgery. And then this guy who I actually thought was going to be proposing to me on Christmas was like, I have a new girlfriend, and if you're in love with me, we can't talk. So I totally got cut out of his life. And that has been very difficult for me to process, and figuring out what the heck I was supposed to do. Obviously now I'm married and got to this point, but what ended up happening was after him, I ended up kind of serial dating again, and essentially just, didn't really know what to do. So what did I do? Processing emotions. Allow yourself to cry, because obviously at this point, I've processed a lot of this. So allowing yourself to cry or to yell, anything that's getting the emotion outside of your body, because if we internalize what's going on, it can show up in the form our emotions can manifest into our bodies and cause all types of dysfunctions. So allowing those emotions to come forward. Writing a letter. That is something, so when we write things down, I'm a massage therapist and work with the brain. I'm a craniosacral therapist, so I work with the brain and central nervous system stuff. When we write a letter, it processes through the brain differently. When we write things down, it comes out differently than when we're speaking. So you can write a letter to this person and never send it and destroy it, burn it, rip it up, put it through the shredder, whatever it is that gives you that closure with the pieces that come forward in that letter. So that is something that I've done, going to talk therapy, talking about things, having somebody who is, spiritually sound. I personally found a Catholic priest who he was a psychologist as well, and I saw him for a lot of my emotional stuff and saw him bi-weekly for years. And just absolutely amazing things can come forward when we open ourselves up to trust somebody else in a confidential setting where we can just kind of let go and be ourselves and try to figure out what's going on. It can take a few times, go to a few different psychologists. It's kind of like trying to find a massage therapist that you really like. You might go to one, it's yeah, it was okay. But you'll just look for that person you just really jive with and who hears you and understands what you're saying and is able to relate back to you and help you understand what it is that you're going through and what steps you can take forward, because they will have way more advice than I can offer in this video. So those are the physical and the emotional level. So then on a spiritual level, how do we process this? So after I had my brain surgery, my brother died and this guy left, I was so mad at God for a while. Like, I sat on my couch and like cussed him out once. I was so mad at like, why would you let this happen? Like, we had such a great like spiritual foundation relationship. We talked about doctrine all the time. Like, at the end of the day, I was Catholic, this guy was Protestant, and he didn't want to try to merge the two deals. So, that was why it didn't work out. But like, I was like, why would you do this? And it's like, I realized while I was like screaming at him, it's like, wow, I'm wrong. I'm mad at the wrong person. Like, the devil is the one who tries to intercept. Like, he comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Like, he wants us to be against God. Like, what did the guy say? The greatest trick the devil ever made was to convince people he doesn't exist. So knowing that God's protection and his spiritual care for us, like we look at the Old Testament, like the story of Joseph, his brothers sold him into slavery. But then at the end of the day, he becomes Pharaoh. Like, God has this way grander plan for us than we could ever imagine. And so, like, in that moment of anger that I had for God, like, recognizing that it's like, oh my gosh, like, he's protecting me from something different. Like, who knows? Like, this guy could have gone off and he may have had affair after affair if I had wound up marrying him. Like, who knows what would have happened? But we have, like, trusting God's divine providence, that spiritual and protective care for us is so important. And like, having hope, we don't want to do spiritual bypassing where we just say, oh, God's got this, God's got this, God's got this. Like, we have to do the work ourselves, like I talked about, going to confession, writing a letter, allowing ourselves to cry, doing these things, and on a preventative aspect too. Proverbs 4:23, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. Like, allowing ourselves to really guard our hearts. Like, I didn't do that very well with the man that I dated prior to my surgery. I was very emotionally and spiritually like dependent on him, and like, he was the one I was turning to through everything, and he continuously told me that he couldn't be there to like support me physically because of, the things we had talked about with the religion differences. So guarding our hearts is super important until we found the one, and like the whole chastity, like guarding our bodies, like reserving them and respecting everything that is within us so that we can go forward and meet the man or woman of our life that God is then entrusting to us, and maintaining that faith, hope, and love. So by going to confession and allowing the priest to absolve you of your sins, that faith, hope, and love plays such a big piece. Like, having faith in God and like in who he says he is and all of the doctrine that surrounds that. And then the hope. Hope is like, if you visualize a seesaw, it is the balance between despair and assumption. So you can or presumption. You can presume that God's got it all handled, and then all of a sudden it's like the seesaw is tipped too far. Or you can say, oh, I'm in total despair, it's too far. That balance between despair and presumption is exactly where hope lies. So allowing yourself to rest there in the center and understand that God's got this, and the love, true love. What is love? There is no greater love than laying down your life for somebody else. Allowing our lives to sacrifice. My commitment to my husband started when my life began because he is my spouse for life. And if it's for my entire life, that starts way before I've even met him. So this is something that's rough. A lot of people have a difficult time processing past relationships, myself included. So I've definitely had a lot of experience in these realms, and I just want to encourage you to just keep moving forward and like I was saying, get to confession, find a good psychologist in your area, and just really spend some time in serious prayer, especially if you're considering dating somebody. Just pray to God that he would be that blanket in your relationship, that magnet, that's that drawing force there. But trust him too in guarding your heart so that heartbreak can be minimized. I mean, it's not completely preventable because the devil does get his little fingers in there and then tries to convince us that it's God. But recognizing that it is the devil, God has his love and care for us, just totally takes the ball out of the park. So God bless you all. I hope that you're doing well, and I will see you in the comments and then again next week. Have a great day.